Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this clip, but before you do, please hit subscribe. Walk me through the day that you were like, I'm going to start writing on Twitter, or like literally the moment that maybe you didn't think anything of it. You're like, it's going to be a hobby for a couple weeks, blow some time. Or was it like a conscious decision? I'm going to go build something.
No, it was not a conscious decision. I mean, I had a great thing going, to be totally honest. Like I really, and to this day, like I loved the firm I was at. The people were awesome. It just wasn't for me. And I didn't know how to describe that because everything that I had viewed as success was about money. My entire life up to that point was like, oh, I need to make this much money and that's going to make me successful. And I was doing that. And so my mind, like I couldn't rationalize the feeling of what, like, is this it? I couldn't rationalize that feeling of there has to be something more because it seemed like I was accomplishing all the things I was supposed to accomplish. COVID hit, and that was the first time that I'd actually had time to think about these things. Like for a lot of people, I just wasn't working the 80 to 100-hour weeks that I was before because there was no commuting, there was no 3 days of travel a week. All of those things had been taken away. And so I had a lot of time to like walk and, you know, be stuck at home, and I didn't have a social life, and you're like in your own head for the first time in a really long time. And what I noticed and what I was observing about the world at that point, that's like a common thread for me, by the way, is like I try to just be as observant as possible about the things that are happening. You see, I like carry around a notebook with me. I write things down. And what I noticed was that there were a lot of people that were confused about what was happening in the world, particularly in the world of markets and finance. It was a time, if you remember, that like markets were just starting to rip up, but everyone was still unemployed and at home, and unemployment was through the roof. And so I had all of these friends from my baseball days that were constantly texting me like, dude, what the hell is going on? I don't understand. Because I was their finance friend. And it didn't matter that they didn't understand that I didn't work in markets. I had no connection to public markets, no idea what was going on. But I was their finance friend. So they were asking me. And what I realized was there was just a gap in the market, if you will, for sort of like layman's terms explanations that were digestible, accessible, etc., around things that were happening in the world of finance. There was plenty of like talking head pundits that you could go listen to on Bloomberg or, you know, CNBC that would like give you the big jargony words to make you feel smart that actually make you feel dumb. There was plenty of that, but there wasn't a whole, and then there was plenty of like TikTokers telling you to YOLO into GameStop call options on the lower end.
My God.
But there was no one in the middle that was just like, here's what's, you know, just give you the simple way of doing it. And so that was what I started doing. The first thing I wrote was basically an explanation of the Fed put, like the idea that the Fed had come in and said they were a buyer at any price and why that was making the market rip upwards. And I wanted to explain that using storytelling. And so I did that. And I basically wrote it on a walk. I like sat down on the floor of my garage when I got home, like wrote out this, you know, thing that I was going to post on Twitter. I had 500 followers at the time. And I came inside and I was like, I said to my wife, I was like, this is a banger. Like this is going viral for sure when I post this tomorrow morning. And she kind of like rolled her eyes at me. She was like, that's ridiculous, you know, whatever. And so I'm in bed the next morning. And at the time, Twitter didn't have thread functionality. So you actually had to like comment under each one. So I like posted the first thing, then I copied and pasted in for my note into the second one. Yeah, exactly. And so I like posted the, whatever, it was 5 tweets, 6 tweets. And an hour goes by and it has like 3 or 4 likes, right? Like, and she like came over and she's like, so you going viral yet? You know, King Viral over here, and you know, like giving me shit, and nothing had happened. And so then I was like, I wonder if there's a way to sort of hustle this thing. And I saw that Chamath had posted something sort of tangentially related to what I'd been talking about, and I basically just commented under it, linking to my thread and saying like, oh yeah, you know, like completely agree, like just wrote this thing explaining it in simple terms. He retweeted it and said like, this is good. And at the time, he wasn't as big of a deal as he is today, but he was already, you know, at a few 100,000 followers. And all of a sudden the thing went bananas. And like, you know, now maybe I wouldn't consider it bananas, like, but it got a few thousand likes for the first thing that I put out, and it jumped me from 500 followers to 2,000. And in that moment, I was like, maybe there's something to this, not as a business, but as a concept of explaining these things in simple terms. Maybe there's something to this. And that was really the start of what has been, you know, this crazy journey that's taken me on all these paths and winding roads.
Okay, so you came home and you said, honey, I think I'm going to leave PE. I've gone to I've played baseball. I've gone to Stanford. I've joined PE, and I'm leaving, and I'm getting into content.
So not quite. What ended up actually happening was the conversation happened that I mentioned at the very outset of, realizing that my parents weren't going to be around forever.
Okay.
We were going to move back to the East Coast. When that happened, I told my firm that I was planning to leave because we were going to move to the East Coast. They, were interested in potentially me working remotely. I'm not a big believer in the ability to work remotely in a job like that. I saw so much importance of just being in the trenches with people on a daily basis, the value that had early in my career. And I didn't want to be that absent, manager that would like fly in once every other week and think that I had a relationship with people. It just didn't make sense to me. And so what my plan was that I was going to go join another investment firm in New York. And so I started going and interviewing for these things and really ran into like a buzzsaw of interview processes where most of the senior people at those firms just could not wrap their head around me continuing to have this public presence while working there. And I still to this day think it was very narrow-minded because I think there'd be immense value if you just opened your eyes to it a bit. But that was their perspective. And I think a lot of it is ego, right? Like, the founder of some firm doesn't want some junior person to have a bigger presence than them or a bigger name or like be the alpha in the room. These like in finance, it's like very alpha male, it's like guerrilla culture, right? It's like who's the alpha male and you got to know there's one alpha male in the room. And so I had a lot of trouble when I was going and doing that. That was like around April, May of 2021. And I basically hit a low point where I had already told my firm I was leaving. So I was sort of like lame duck. And I didn't have a new thing. All of them had kind of run to ground and been dry. And I woke up one morning and I was like having a panic attack on like I screwed over this thing that was really good that I had going for me in California. I don't have a new thing. And I was talking to my wife and she said, well, like you're making all this money on this other thing that you're doing and you're only doing that on the weekend. Like, what if you just did that? Like, what does that look like if you just did that? Wouldn't that be great? And you could work for yourself. And honestly, I just never thought about it until she said it. Because I don't come from an entrepreneurial background. Like my dad, as I said, is like an academic track. Everything's about safe. He's a tenured professor. That's like the safest track you can possibly have in life. And so my whole thing was always like W-2 income, safe employment, the track, partner track, whatever.
Make mom happy.
Yeah, and exactly. And I'd never thought about it. And so she said it, and I kind of thought like, oh, wow. I didn't go to business school. And so my mind was like, we've saved up money. We have a good base. Maybe I can just have this be like, if it works out, amazing. That's my upside case. If it doesn't, it's like a 2-year MBA. I went and gave something a shot and tried to build some businesses and saw what happened. But that was really the tipping point, was actually her saying, maybe you should go give this thing a shot that you're doing on the side.